Hey, welcome to Kreeda Talks. Today we have with us Ajay Menon, who is the founder for Forza India, amongst other things which we will talk about. Welcome to the show, Ajay.
Thanks, man. Thanks for inviting us. And as we were discussing just off the camera, I think this is the new normal, doing a Zoom meeting. So really psyched to be here.
Oh, yes, it is, isn't it? And I mean, everything's moving online nowadays, right? And for me, I think it comes at the right time because everybody's been looking at creating digital assets, and because of what's happening right now, I feel it's important, and it's given that fillip that a lot of people were waiting for. So for me, I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely, man. I think now even the traditional companies that were against technology have been, forced to use technology because that's the only thing that's running now. And I think work from home is going to become the new normal. 5 day weeks, or maybe even less, or 4 day weeks, and working from home is going to be the new normal. So
True.
yeah, I mean that's a positive aspect.
All right, Ajay. So before I start off with discussing entrepreneurship in football, right? I want to understand what got you to football in the first place.
Well, football's always been a passion. I think the first time I actually saw the sport was during the '98 World Cup, and it was the final between France and Brazil, and Ronaldo missing the final, or was he going to play? Was he not going to play because of the illness? So that really caught my eye, but I was way too young to understand it. 2002 is when I watched a World Cup, the entire tournament, and we started playing football in our society ground. Like during when we grew up, we were lucky enough that we had a community ground where we used to play a lot of cricket, but and football during the rains. But 2002 onwards, football became an everyday sport for us, and that really drew me towards the sport. And of course, playing a lot of PlayStation back then, that also helped in understanding the game and becoming a fan of the sport. And I think I became an AS Roma fan, which is why you can see the colors here. So I think after 2004, 2005, I've not missed a single Roma game. So football was the passion. I did my undergrads in biotechnology, and I wanted to pursue sports management in 2008, 2007, 2008, but it was not considered as a career option, a valid career option. So I eventually had to do my master's in business administration, so MBA, and it took me 10 years in the corporate world before I said, enough is enough. Now is the time to jump in. I just turned 30 2 years ago, and I was like, I'm going to do this now. It's now or never. So that's what got me into football.
That's actually very interesting to hear because I had a very similar trajectory, right? So I started off doing advertising, and I always wanted to get into sports, but it took me like almost a decade to finally get into this. And I think you've been an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur, and you hit a very interesting point, right? Where you said it's not like sports in general is not considered a viable career, right? So how important do you think it is for people to have a supportive I wouldn't just say family, I would say a supportive background in general, like people around them that support them, that can push people towards not just entrepreneuring in sports, right? Just like pushing people towards sports. How important is it, do you think?
I think it's really crucial to have that open mindset, and having spent now 2 years in the grassroots football industry, I see that there's a small change happening that probably didn't exist during our times when we were growing up. Parents are a little more open, a little more supportive because they've also gone through the same thing. And we've seen so many parents come up to us, and I'm sure that's the case with every sports entrepreneur or sports company where they want to explore if sports is a viable career option for their child. So it's good to see that so many parents want kids to pursue a career in sport. And but that kind of support was probably not existent because we didn't have a structure in sports as such. And a lot has changed since the last decade and 12 years, especially say after the IPL came in, where you saw so many brands come in, you saw sports getting structure, and we've seen a similar trend in football, in kabaddi, in hockey, not so much, but they still try to do something that in badminton and in tennis as well. So I think that mindset, which wasn't there in Indian parents before, that the support to now pursue a career in sport has now changed with all these things coming up. So many institutes offering sports management courses. So It's a real paradigm shift. It's a slow shift, no doubt, but it's happening for sure.
Would you say there's enough money in the sporting ecosystem, right? So obviously IPLs change the way we look at sports in the country, right? So we finally figured that there's money to be made, and IPL's been going on for almost a decade now, more than a decade, I think. Would you say, but it's all the other sports have gotten enough money in them to pull people towards them?
I don't think so. Because cricket being so dominant in India, and IPL being such a polished and such a apex product, because it has everything. It has fans, fan engagement, sponsors, eyeballs. Everything is there. So overall in India, I think for any other sport, it's a challenge to even match up close to cricket. But therein lies the beauty of it, wherein you have an opportunity to make something unique. Like you're a football fan, you know how different football is from cricket. Like cricket culture is different, football culture is different. So there represents an opportunity wherein we can explore to sort of to start something unique. Yeah, the money is in it is not great at the moment, but it's picking up. For example, no one thought a pro kabaddi league would do so well, because they completely redefined the sport. They repackaged it, and suddenly it had all the eyeballs. Suddenly it had sponsors coming in, and the kabaddi players actually started to make some good money off it, which probably 10 years ago was an impossible thought. So I think change does come slowly, and the opportunity is there for football and other sports to grow. And I think let's not set cricket as the benchmark, but we can try to do our own thing uniquely in every sport.
True. And how important is it? Like, so if you look at, and again, I'm sorry, keep coming back to cricket because it's the only successful case study we have in the country, right?
Yeah.
So the way you look at crickets come up, right, and the governing body had to realize that there was money to be made for the ecosystem to have money, right? So for quite some time we didn't, right? There wasn't enough money in cricket as well. 83 World Cup happened. Still, there wasn't a lot of money coming in. I think it was around 91 or 92 when post-apartheid the South Africa series happened, where BCCI for the first time realized that they could broadcast it and get money out of it, right? So uh, how helpful would you say are the policies that we have today for sports in the country? Is it encouraging enough for people like, say, you have come in, somebody like me who has come in? I still haven't, I've jumped, but I haven't been an entrepreneur in sports right now. You've jumped and become an entrepreneur. So how encouraging are the policies, would you say, for people to jump in?
I think being an entrepreneur is quite difficult, and sport as a sector is not focused on. Personally, I've tried to get into the startup India and all those other initiatives that's taken up by the government, but sports doesn't fall into that realm anywhere. So you're kind of left by yourself, and then the team that you have with and the connections that you're making along the way. So in terms of those policies and those initiatives for sports, it's not been that helpful. But when it comes to the federation and the governing bodies that govern football in India, I think it's been I mean they've finally woken up, I would say, after the ISL came in. I don't want to take anyone's side here, because you have AIFF, you have FSDL, and Star Sports, three separate entities, and all three have a backstory to it. But the way I look at it is that ISL really helped football to catch attention amongst the masses. I mean, the I League was there, is still there. The NFL was there, and of course those hotbed areas of Calcutta with the legacy clubs, Kerala, Goa, the Northeast, obviously had a lot of interest in football. But what the ISL has managed to do positively is it's managed to create fans across cities and towns where football never existed before. So you have a new bunch of fans who've come in. You've got a whole lot of sponsors who come in who realize that hey, football is quite interesting to invest in. And I think what speaks for itself is the MOU signed by Reliance Foundation and the Premier League, with the Premier League bringing its youth teams over here to play a competition, and the takeover by the City Football Group. And that's a massive turning point, because they don't invest their money anywhere. They very strategically choose to invest money in football clubs across the world, and to invest in Mumbai city, and Mumbai historically not being a football hotbed as such, but then understanding that there is potential and they're in it for the long term because they've got about 63%, which is the majority of
Mm.
the stakeholding over there. So I think that is something which has changed. Like since ISL came in 2014, the landscape of Indian football has definitely changed. It is slow, no doubt, but I think there is enough potential for investors, for brands to make money off it in the long term.
Talking about strategic investments, right? What made you decide to get into grassroots? Like most people, and if you look at any other industry than sports, people would,
Yeah.
the lowest hanging fruits for entrepreneurship generally are media. Right? Mostly people
Yeah.
want to do media startups, which is easy to do, right? You create content, you curate content, and try selling it. But you got into grassroots. What made you jump into grassroots?
Well, because I've been following Roma and Serie A, I was
Hmm.
always inclined towards coaching. And in Serie A, every game is a tactical battle. So I always was inclined to coaching, which is why I did the first level of the license courses here to study the technical point of view. And I realized, I also traveled to the US in 2014, where I was lucky enough to have visited a lot of grassroots football clubs over there, and I had no intention of visiting them. It just so happened because the love of football is there, I coincidentally just ran into some training sessions and stuff that was happening in local parks, and I was amazed to see the culture of US soccer, and I felt that probably we can try to take a leaf of their book. Obviously, not copy the entire thing by itself because it's a different demographic, it's a different culture, everything. But I believe that for any successful footballing country, the cradle is the grassroots. The best players in the world play in these small clubs, in these small tournaments, the Sunday league tournaments, and that's where they build their mark. And once they turn pro, the cognitive skills that they've learned at the grassroots actually come to the forefront, not the training at the club itself. Because that's how long. I mean, you need to start young to play football. And in India, especially in Mumbai, I realized that there was a gap because we were starting late. So I thought that this is a perfect area to come in. As you said, for sports media was more alluring. It was more viable option. Grassroots had a lot of work to be done, but I was ready for the challenge to take it up because I saw that there's a gap, and our goal right from the outset of when we started Forza India was to make it inclusive. We want every child to have a ball at his or her feet, and start as young as possible. And it was the summer of 2018 when I quit my corporate job and I just took a plunge into it. And yeah, I mean, it's been a great journey from there to then. But I think that is what sort of all these factors combined made me realize that grassroots was the way to go.
Okay. So one question here. So do you think there's enough money in grassroots though for other people who want to come in as well?
I'm sure there is enough money because the way that we look at it is this comes along with education. Although it's an outdoor activity, the thing here is that it's about well-being, both physical and mental well-being of a child, and the chance to learn life skills on the football pitch, which you do not necessarily get to learn in a classroom. And of course, you learn a sport, you learn to fall in love with the game, you enjoy playing, you make new friends, you start communicating. So I know that this word is used a lot, which is holistic. It's used by every grassroots instructor, by every coach, by every organization, but that is what it is. Like when you and I were playing football, we inevitably became different people after playing the game, because we learned soft skills like communication, like the team spirit, and just the whole aspect of fair play, being uh, sorry sort of taking responsibility, being a leader on the pitch has helped us off the pitch as well. So the way that we try to sort of place the product to parents and potential guardians of these kids is that this is a very wholesome way. So obviously, the end goal is that you become a pro footballer, but that it's not the only goal, right? I mean, when you take up a sport or you do any extracurricular activity, it's about learning overall, and that's how we place our product, like in terms of football coaching. And we've been lucky enough, and there are many academies, say like a Barca or a La Liga, who have come from abroad, who probably charge 3 or 4 times more, but they're giving that quality product, and they've found their target audience, and they're making good revenue. So definitely there is enough potential to make money at the grassroots.
So I think one you hit the nail on the head when you said that this is a part of your training, right? So whatever classroom training is happening for physics and chemistry and geography and history, this is also a part of the same thing. But so now, and this becomes even more relevant with what's happening right now across the globe. Isn't there the limitation though that to learn this, you will have to have some amount of physical prowess? I'm not saying you've got to be a Gareth Bale or a Cristiano Ronaldo, but you'll have to have some amount of physical prowess. That's one. And the second is you need to be in a physical place. So how will what's happening right now in the world? How does that affect grassroots football training?
It affects us very, very badly because it is an outdoor sport. It's a team sport. So I mean, there's no sugarcoating this. That we've been massively hit by the pandemic, and we've tried to do online sessions at home, but it's to a very limited rate of success, because there are things that you can't do at home that you can do on the pitch. So it does affect us, and for us there's no other option but to get back on the pitch and start training again. What actually, just to address and just to go off topic a bit, how we structure our batches, we are very age group specific, and that's something that didn't exist 5 to 6 years ago, where you had a 6-year-old playing with a 12-year-old. So what we try to do right from the start is to have age specific and skill set specific batches for kids. And by skill set specific, I mean that there are kids who don't have the physical prowess, who are 11, 12, or even 13 years of age, but who probably will not develop into a proper footballer or technically good footballer. So what we've done is we've put all these kids together in one batch, and we regress down the training session. It's very basic, so that they get a feel of it, and they don't get discouraged, because if they are put in the same batch with a 9-year-old child, and if the 9-year-old child is very gifted and technically good, that 12-year-old child will lose confidence and morale. So what we've tried to do is to have a separate training regimen for them, have a separate coaching curriculum for them, and right from the outset we tell the parents that, hey, it's going to be very difficult for your child to actually get into that rhythm of playing, because as a parent you expect your child to be the next Cristiano or the next Messi, but I think we know that that won't be possible with these kids. But what we try to do is to get them that inclusion, to get that feel of playing the game and enjoy the game, and also work out eventually. So yeah, just drifted off, but that is what it is. But for any outdoor sport, be it cricket or be it football or anything, we need to be out on the ground. I mean, there's all the Zoom classes or the online thing is not going to work with us.
True, true. I'm going to come back to the point that you were speaking about regarding your trip to the US, right? And if you look at the way curriculums are set in the Western ecosystem, so and I'm looking at even say Europe, and you look at the way curriculums are set in India, right? What differences did you see? And I mean, I know for a fact that you've been trying to change the way football training is imparted as well, right?
Yeah.
So, what differences did you see that you felt like these are certain gaps that we need to cover?
Yeah, so I think for us it's always been result oriented everywhere, and I think that's just embedded in our DNA and our culture that, hey, if we're doing something, we need to be number one or top the class. So any game that even an under 8 or under 10 team plays, they're expected to win, and in that winning, development does not happen. And I think that's the major difference between global football leaders and us, because we are so focused on the result even at under 10. I mean, Aritra, just imagine if a child is 17, 18, he doesn't care, the games that he won or lost when he was 9 years old, But so what we've been trying to do, and this is something that we've experienced it n number of times during tournaments and matches, is when parents come and question us, question the coaches, and stuff like that. So for us, it's development. Winning is important for sure. We're not telling the team that we're going to lose every game or whatever, but yeah, you are bound to experience losses and wins, and you don't compromise that for development. Wherein, for example, just a very simple explanation is that you don't kick the ball directly in a fire side from the goalkeeper to a center forward who's right on the side of the other goal and tries to score a goal. We want the child to, we want the team to pass properly, dribble, take the man one or take the child one on one, try to dribble past the opponent, and create that, build that skill set and gradually grow. So, for example, if the coach is focusing on, say, a passing during a game that we play on the weekend, so how we structure it is that we have 2 sessions in the week and a match day on a weekend. So if the topic is passing on the match day, we try to evaluate the passing. So the coach will tell the kids that, okay, I want you all to implement whatever you've learned during the training sessions, and I want to see it in the game. So just be confident and do it. So overall, our philosophy has always been in grassroots, especially for our under 8, under 10, and under 12 teams, is development at all costs. So be it playing out of the back or taking the man one on one, those are the things that we really want to promote rather than going and winning games, like solely winning games. So that's probably been our philosophy so far.
Say somebody that wants to come into the whole ecosystem of grassroots football, grassroots training in general. Okay, I'm not going to keep it just to football. And one, as an entrepreneur, when you want to come into this, and second, say, if there is an investor who wants to come in. One thing that you see in, I would say, at the age group of, say, around under 18, okay, for any kind of physical sports training, the attrition rate is pretty high at the age of around 14 or 15. And that coincides generally with people graduating from their schools. The moment people graduate from their schools, there is a launch pad, there is a path forward. Obviously, there are university games happening, there are intercollegiate games happening. But could you explain why this attrition rate at that specific point, and how do we arrest that going forward so that anybody who's looking at the ecosystem doesn't feel that the universe of customers is limited?
Right. So I think when it comes to under 16, under 17, you basically evolve from the grassroots and come into the youth football phase of development. And obviously, in India, since we do not have the culture of sports, or the culture of choosing a career in sport, we see a very, very high dropout and high attrition rate at that point of time. Also, in colleges abroad, you have scholarships that are offered with sport, and I think that is something where the education and the sport ministry together have to synergize and form. There are a lot. It's not like I'm just bad mouthing them. There are a lot of initiatives that's done by them where they promote athletes, but this has to be done even more given our population and a demographic. We are a very young country right now, and we have the potential to do well in every sport. Be it an Olympic sport, be it a team sport, or be it in individual sports. So combining sports and education, I think, is something that we really, really need at this hour, so that we don't have the dropout and the high attrition rate. Speaking of football, more specifically, the solution is we need to have more football clubs. As simple as that. Like, create more football clubs so that there are more tournaments to play in. And of course, having residential academies is the dream. So, someone who's passed out 12th grade can pursue his or her graduation along with football, while while staying in a very cohesive environment, and having training every day, and then of course the more clubs that exist in the ecosystem means that you get more matches. So yeah, in football, the need of the hour is definitely more and more football clubs. That's where the AIFF and the other governing bodies need to sort of promote youth football. They need to relax a lot of regulations and make it more sustainable for entrepreneurs to start football clubs. And just I mean, the reason why I went into the grassroots is because for me, financially or even with my limited bandwidth, it's impossible to start a football club, at a senior team or at a youth team. So I had to sort of look at the grassroots because that's how the system is right now. But if they make it more conducive, that will just promote growth in football and gradually in every sport for that matter.
I mean, talking about training, right? So, how important do you think, Ajay, it is for the entrepreneur to understand the game? Okay, one is that, and second, like you said, right, you actually got your hands dirty, right? So you went and got the coaching
Yeah.
license and then came in and started this. How important do you think it is for anybody wanting to come in to have that knowledge? So, say tomorrow somebody with money wants to come into this field, and he or she just acts as the person with the person who's bankrolling the whole thing. Is
Yeah.
that sustainable, or do you think it is suggested that, or it's suggestible that anybody wanting to come in should get that training as well?
I think it's a mix of both because sport is not a business that you can inherit without passion. I mean, in India, when you have family business as such a big thing, and probably the only country in the world where colleges offer a course of family business management, it's just very very abusing, and you see so many CAs becoming CAs after their father or getting businesses passed on for several generations. Sport is not like that because you need to be passionate about the game. So for entrepreneurs who want to bankroll their own sports company, they need to be passionate about the game. And I think the best thing that the game teaches you is that you're always a student of the game. You're always learning on an everyday basis. When I went for the D license, it's very funny that I thought I knew everything because as a kid I follow Serie A and I've done a detailed research on Fabio Capello, Luciano Spalletti, the Marcelo Lippi's and Ancelotti's, and I'm like, coaching is not that difficult. And in my football manager save, I've managed to take Roma from like fourth place to champions of Europe. But then you come in and you're like blown away because there's so much to learn, and I think that has humbled me personally, and that's made me realize that the game is the teacher and you're just a student. So for entrepreneurs who want to succeed or who want to really really make a difference, they need to get their hands dirty. They need to learn more. For investors coming in, I think it's good if they do that. But if they partner up with someone who knows or who shares the same philosophy and the values as a person who's running it, I think that really helps. And I think that's the biggest lesson for every entrepreneur is that no company succeeds by itself. You need a strong team, a team that actually believes in your vision, in your philosophy, who's aligned to the principles and core values that you have. And I think that's how every company and every entrepreneur moves forward.
Now that you are involved in grassroots in Bombay, right, and we spoke about the importance of, so we're speaking about how CA ka beta CA ban jata hai, and like certain things are passed on, right? And we know it, football in general is played in pockets, right? So I think you get your love for football from the elders of your family. You come from a Malayali family, I come from a Bengali family. It's the same, right? So we've had the culture. We've seen our parents stay up at night watching football games,
Right.
doing banter with their friends on call or when they're coming around. Now, with you having started grassroots football training in Bombay, do you see that culture finally catching up in an urban center like Bombay? So, because I know for a fact, Delhi it's happening, right? So, I mean, Prashant can attest to that fact, right? And is it finally catching up in Bombay? You'd say.
It is, man. It is, and I think credit goes to the Premier League because you've seen such a massive support, in Mumbai with the Premier League teams when there are screenings held of big games, Champions League games, or even say an El Clasico, you have numbers that throng to pubs at, in the wee hours of night. Um, with grassroots football, what we've seen is that the kids now force the parents, like, mom, dad, I want to watch this game. Or what we try to do is we try to take the kids to the Mumbai City games, and the first time it's us, the second time it's them. Like, they enjoyed it so much that, like, we want to go back there again. So the culture has changed. It is changing, but personally, I feel it's happening at a very slow rate. I think we can expedite it. We can catalyze it, and this is something that has also happened in the US and even say and Australia. So similar markets, I would say, because you have multi-sport cultures over there as well. 4 to 5 sports that dominate. In India, it's the one sport, but it's the equivalent of 4 5 sports. But you've seen that success. You've seen fans going to the stadiums, making tifos, wearing the scarves, and just football becoming a part of their daily lives. And in India, I mean, you just see a Kerala Blasters. I mean, a Kerala Blasters didn't have to do anything because the football culture was there. So for them it was easy. They had 40,000 fans already turning up for every home game. That's the bell right there. It's very weird. I'm hearing the bell after a very long time.
And every time the bell rings, you're like, oh my God, who is it?
Yeah, who is it?
Who is it? You're not expecting anybody to come in right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So for Mumbai, I think it's more of it's a challenge here because it's dominated by cricket, and we've seen it happening slowly and steadily because of the screenings, because of a lot of young people supporting Premier League teams. The culture is happening. Next generation that comes in would be the football fans, like the kids at our academy who are 12, 13, 14 years old. They are the ones who will carry the fan culture forward.
Interesting. So I was checking out your blog, right? Vlog on Humans of Indian Football, and it was fascinating to see parents and especially women coming to the stadiums with their kids. It's something we've not seen a lot. At least, like if you go down to the Andheri Sports Complex for a game, you won't see that a lot. So it's fascinating, that such things happen in this country, but it's going to take time. I agree. How long do you think? Okay, two-pronged question here. How long do you think it takes for a grassroots business to make humongous amounts of money? I'm not saying slight amounts of profit, but good amounts of money for other people to see, hey, this is a money spinning business, right? So if I can draw parallels to the classroom education businesses outside of your school. So you had Mahesh tutorials and Sinhals and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you have Byju's. That's finally broken that barrier, right? So one,
Right.
how long does it take for an entrepreneur to make humongous amounts of money, or like to get to that critical mass? And second, how long do you think it will take for this whole ecosystem to go to the next level? Right? So we've seen a spurt of growth happening ever since the ISL came in. So now that we have two leagues running and you have so many local leagues, right? There's a Calcutta local league, there's a Goa league, there's a Kerala league. So, and the 7-a-sides in Kerala. So how long do you think that's going to take for the ecosystem to take the next step?
So for the entrepreneur and the businesses, for any business in sport, let me just leave it at a very basic timeline and call it between 3 to 10 years is how long it will take for you to actually make a product, be comfortable with the product, scale it up, get those numbers, and get those consistency levels day in and day out. So it takes time because of sport not being a part of our daily lives, or sport not being prioritized over say an education. So even though, like as you mentioned, Byju's, even though they were into education, they found it really tough to break in. But once they broke in, they became unicorn. Similarly, I think for sport, for any sports entrepreneur, I think the key here is to just keep on hustling, have patience, and just keep on improving your product with time, because I believe that's the only way to survive in this industry. Because you've seen so many football schools and football academies opening up, and the ones who are always innovative and the ones who are proactive are the ones who stand out from the competition. So gone are the days where you football is that mud ground sport where you don't have assessment or development. It's much more structured now, and we still have a long way to go. And in terms of the overall development happening in India, it's going to take a while because there are so many stakeholders in the ecosystem. From the federation to governing bodies to clubs, officials, referees, parents. So the brilliant part is that everything starts at the grassroots. For example, now for a long time we did not have games to play. We had training sessions for under 8, under 10, under 12, but that weekend game was never there. So obviously when Sunday League came in, we jumped in right away. But obviously even the Sunday League doesn't give enough games. Like, it's not every Sunday. So what we did is amongst 2-3 academies, we decided that we'll play our own Sunday League, our own tournament. So uh, we were complaining that okay, we don't have a system, we don't have a league. Wherein we realized that the answer is right there in front of us. All we have to do is connect. So between three of us, a couple of academies, we used to either rent out a Navy Sports Complex, the turf, or probably go to one other's turf wherever we train and player friendly. Like in 1.5 hours, we used to get like 4 or 5 games. So like small games. But then the point is that it happened. So grassroots is, like, I would say, the microscopic example of the overall ecosystem, because what we try to do is we try to get the parents more involved. On match days, we tell them, if we ask them if they can help us out, by bringing in their cars or bringing in snacks, food, water, and being a part of the community. And I think that translates to an overall picture. So when you turn pro, these are the things that you learn from, like the whole feeling of a community, the whole feeling of going to match days. So if we actually focus our attention on building the grassroots, the rest of it will just follow. The professional leagues, I believe, are much more easier to manage than the grassroots football coaching. So we are heading in the right path, but as I said, it's slow. So I don't want to put a timeline to it, because I know a lot of people go out and say that India will qualify for the 2026 World Cup. But I think we are headed in the right direction, at least to become a power in Asia. And I think that should be our goal. We should learn from the ecosystems in Japan and Iran and even in Australia, how they've managed to do it. And if they can do it, there's no reason why we can't do it.
I mean, Japan actually has set a 100-year plan, right? So it's sounds foolish to say that we might qualify for 2026. No, we're not going to qualify for 2026. We're far, far away from that. But I agree that we're taking the right baby steps at least, right? Ajay, so one thing, you spoke about FC Barcelona, and there are so many other academies, right? And pretty much a lot of Indian entrepreneurs have also come into this, right? So how important do you think is it to have one binding curriculum, right? So what is being taught at Forza India is not the same that is being taught at somewhere else, right? So for a parent, it becomes very difficult as well, right, to judge. So how important would you say is it to have one single curriculum that everybody is imparting? And secondly, how, as a parent, do I judge the success or the lack of it of an academy? So when it comes to schools or colleges, we see placements kitna ho raha hai, and our what's the pass percentage of the college at the school. How do you judge that for an academy?
That's a brilliant question, and something that I've been waiting to answer, because this is a dilemma that is faced by everyone, every parent for that matter. They're like, you have Barcelona, who are a world leader, a big name in football, and they charge accordingly, and they bring in their expertise, their technical expertise, their curriculum, and stuff like that. But if you look at it, their goal is always development. And I think there doesn't need to be one common binding curriculum book for every academy. Every academy can be unique, have its own philosophy, but the net goal has to be development. For example, the Lionel Messi example is a really good one. Now he had his grassroots in Argentina, at Newell's Old Boys. And Argentina also had a very strong futsal structure, a grassroots structure. So when he moved to Spain at such a young age, he blended in right away because his culture, or the training that he got back then was towards development, which is the case with any football club, like any professional football club. Of course, they have the liberty to cherry pick the best players, but their net goal is for every youth player or every player at the grassroots to develop significantly in terms of technical and tactical ability. So in India, of course, you have the big names who've come in, and I totally understand parents choosing a Barcelona or a La Liga or a Boca Juniors because of the brand name, the culture, and the technical thing. But I think our Indian academies are not far behind. There's so many of us who are inspired, who are learning every day, who especially during this time we've been honing our skill set by attending a lot of webinars and coaching programs and stuff like that, and we're very eager to implement it on the pitch. I mean, learning theory is on one side, but football is all about implementing it on the pitch. And I believe that a successful academy should allow its coaches to experiment and bring his or her own ideas into the football pitch. But as I told you, I'm reiterating this, but the net goal has to be overdevelopment. So for any academy to be judged, I think we have to see by the quality of people who come out of the academy. For example, from our own journey, we had a child who was 7 years old when he joined. He was quite strong. He was a very tall guy. 7 year old was close to about almost 5 feet. For his age, which is like humongous for that age. But he wasn't good technically, and he was extremely mischievous. He just was the troublemaker. But credit to one of our coaches, Mizo coach called Fella. He stuck by him, and he was involved so much with him that within a year now, yeah, the parent obviously was behind us, like why isn't he improving? But it took a year and a half for him to understand his new environment, and now he is very cooperative. Now he's the leader of the pack. He motivates the other kids to join in, and he's improved technically as well. So I think those little victories, especially in grassroots, should be counted more than say getting winning trophies or winning cups or whatever. And of course, we want the talented kids or kids with potential to move on and play for a Mumbai City FC or for any other football club for that matter. So I think it's very important for the entire grassroots ecosystem to be connected in that way, wherein there is an immediate platform. If a child is performing well or has a potential to go and make it, there should be a ready platform for him or her to jump onto that bandwagon. So that is how you probably measure the success.
So no, I completely agree with that. So I've always thought, if we are to judge the success of an academy, it's got to be the amount of players they have produced, right? So it can only happen after an academy has been in existence for say half a decade minimum. And if you and this is just maybe this is just me, but if I look at it, the Indian players are still coming out of Indian academies. So I mean, I don't want to shit on the Barsas and the PSG academies out here, but for me, I think yes, they are in it for the development, but I think they're in it for the development of their bank accounts. Like I'm going to put, I've said this to anybody who wants to listen to this because
Yeah.
and for me, I think it needs to have development, obviously, as you said, right? So player development needs to happen. Yeah, I'm going to come back to the curriculum bit, right? And this is an example I keep giving every time curriculums come up. I was fascinated by Cricket Australia's curriculum. Okay, so the moment you want to enroll your child, the first question is what age are they? And they tell you that this is a 7-year program. I have not heard a single football academy do that. Okay, we are always saying this is a summer batch or this is a winter batch or this is a this batch. What stops us from saying that, hey, I'm going to take your child today at the age of 8 and he's going to be with me for the next 7 years, which is what a school does. So a school doesn't come and ask you, hey, are you going to renew for the next year? It's taken for granted that the kid is going to renew till he finishes off school, right? Why can't we do that in grassroots football too?
I think that is probably the $1 million question, and that's where the lack of leadership within the organizations or within the uh, sort of the boards and the federations come into effect, and it circles back to we don't have enough football clubs. So 15 is when a child enters his or her youth phase, and we don't have a football club for the child to go to. So it's very difficult for grassroots academies to actually present a career progression plan. Yeah, I mean, we do have a connect, and a lot of academies work with semi-pro clubs in Mumbai with the MDFA. So you have academies who have MDFA teams, senior teams. We have an MOU with Rebels Football Club in Bangalore, wherein they have a residential academy. So those are the few measures that we can take. But until and unless there are more football clubs, until and unless the ecosystem is not sustainable, there is not going to be a definite pathway like you mentioned with Cricket Australia. You see, with the talent coming out, or even in India for that matter, because of the IPL and because the Ranji being upgraded, you lose an international player and you bring in a player from a domestic circuit. He immediately is at ease with the environment that he's put into, because the quality of level has gone up so much. But that's not the case with football. And the simple reason is that we don't play enough games, we don't have enough clubs, and we don't have enough policies in place to promote the growth and development of football. So it's so result oriented, like we want to win all the time. uh, that the focus on development totally goes away, and we can't create better players. So it comes down to maybe the entire circle, but it's as simple as we need to break the wheel and put a new one. And I think that is happening. It is happening slowly, but it is positively happening, which is why we are in the ecosystem, and we're seeing the change that's happening, and we're trying our best to sort of expedite it. So yeah, I mean that's what it is right now.
Very interesting point, right? So, we're talking about opportunities to play right now. If you look at opportunities for a child, yes, they do not exist today because we do not have the clubs. But if you think about a similar ecosystem, okay, and if I'm to draw a parallel to the Indian, I'm going to say the subcontinent in general, to the African ecosystem, right? And one, infrastructurally, I think we are better than the African ecosystem.
Yeah.
And with respect to both playing facilities as well as clubs, right? But African players are still going out. Okay, okay, they're physically more gifted than us. But for me personally, I also feel that they're absolute hustlers, right? So it's not that every African footballer is flying a straight in Europe. There are a bunch playing in India, and they're still being amongst the best.
Yeah.
But when it comes to India, and I don't want to dive into a history lesson right now, but our fascination for the color white skin tone, is just so visible, right? So again, is it a lack of opportunities that stops an Indian player from plying his trade in a Malaysia or a Japan? So we've had some players go out and play in Europe. Okay, so we've had Gurpreet play there. We've had Chetri try and play there. We've just had a kid from Goa go and play in Portugal's fourth division, right? So which one do you think, from your vantage point, makes more sense? To stay and play in an I-League club where the league runs for 4 to 5 months, okay, the level of competition is not going to be very high because if you don't have good enough footballers, so if I play them, my football's not going to improve. Versus going and playing in a J League, okay, and hopefully have the opportunity to rub shoulders with somebody like a Torres or an Iniesta, or even say we don't go to the first division of J League, go to a Malaysia, go to an Australia, there's A League happening, where opportunities are higher, the leagues run for longer terms, and the talent around you is better. So is it something that we don't want to do, or is it a lack of opportunities that's stopping our players from doing it?
Another fantastic question, man. I mean, I actually picked up two anecdotes. One was from Ishant Pandita, who's playing in, I think, the 5th or 6th tier of Spanish football. And the other one was in the live between Sunil Chetri and I am Vijay. So in the first one, Ishant Pandita was like, we need more Indian players to come out and play in Spain or in Europe for that matter. So obviously, getting in the Premier League is difficult. Getting England is difficult because of work permit. Baichung did it with Bury long time ago, but I think even Sunil tried, but it just didn't go through, right? So I think going to Spain or Germany or any of those European clubs where Gurpreet went to Norway to play, it makes sense because you suddenly are in a very different ecosystem. Ecosystem that promotes growth and development. The money is in there for sure, and of course there's that fear of shifting to a new country, and that is what happened to I am Vijayan back in the day when he had offers from clubs in Asia, but he was just fearful to go there because there was a language barrier, the country barrier. There was no one to support him, to guide him, and to mentor him. That hey, I mean, because we didn't have a professional structure. So you're talking about having no agents or having no agencies to manage you, having or clubs just being clubs and not being that supportive. I would say that supporting hand, which is the case now because the club actually supports its players. Indian clubs also support their players. So that wasn't there. Uh, Definitely, the better choice is to probably, if you get a chance, you have to take the chance and go abroad and play. Even if it's for a year or two, it makes a big difference. I think the Gurpreet that went to Norway was a different Gurpreet, and the one he after he came back, that's a completely different Gurpreet who came back. So it goes to show because say a J League or an A League or even the Malaysian, Indonesian leagues, they've been there. It's a longer season. You have much more seasoned coaches out there. The culture is there, and you grow as a player. And when you try to play in a different league, it's a whole new different environment. You are challenging yourself to become a better player. So it definitely would help. Unfortunately, the two factors. One is money. Whatever it is, like a fifth tier Spanish club will not give you good money compared to say an ISL club, for that matter. So being a reserve in the ISL is far more lucrative than trying to make it in the fifth division somewhere. And secondly, it's that lack of conditioning. You have that fear that stops you from taking those risks, and all those can be fixed in the youth and grassroots, where if you have like structured academies and clubs, you have professionals who are there with you, coaches, mentors who are there to guide you and support you. That even if it means giving up your family and your home and the home comfort away, it's for the better good. And that's why you see so many South American kids going to Europe. Obviously, not all of them make it big, but they go through that struggle, of adapting to a new culture, new city, and when they actually make it, it pays off eventually. So I think we should totally be inspired, and I'm waiting for the day when we see an Indian actually play in the A League or J League versus an Indian playing in the Premier League.
And talking about the difference between these two, well, like when I say these two, I'm saying one being the Indian ecosystem and second being any other. We've seen how different it is as well, right? So we've had a coach come in from Singapore, Chennai City's coach, and
Yeah,
he blew the league away, right? I mean, just
yeah.
with his new methods and the way he did stuff, it was like a lesson for Indian coaches, right? Okay, कि ये भी हो सकता है, right? So when you look at the difference, so one is obviously the infra that is there, the technical infra, the coaching infra. Do you also see a difference in the technology being used? And would you say, as a footballing ecosystem, I think we're way behind the curve in using technology in general as a society in India. How far back behind? I'm hoping we are not very, but how far behind do you think we are in using technology in football, and especially in grassroots training? Because I think when you go to the ISL level, it's pretty much there, right? So
Yeah,
you
it's
have
there.
the
It's there.
same things that are there. But when it comes to grassroots, are there enough technologies being used today?
I think with grassroots, it's more about actually getting access through technology to different curriculums and to different cultures. So it's all about learning in grassroots and then implementing it. Of course, you're right when you say that in ISL we are there. We're using everything. We're tracking and monitoring the players' heart movement, blood rate, everything is there. We have video analytics. We have scouts who go and analyze the opposition. So all that is there. With grassroots, actually, it's a very funny thing. It actually more comes down to technical development. A simple example I would want to share is that during my D license, during a practical exam, there was a coach who was probably 60, 65 years of age. And when he was doing his practical, there was a child who tried to nutmeg someone, 11, 12-year-old child, okay? And he stopped the game and he said, "Kya kar raha hai? क्यों शाइनिंग कर रहा है?" एंड आई एम लाइक, कम ऑन, ये 11-12 साल का बच्चा है, अगर ये ट्रेनिंग ग्राउंड में नहीं करेगा, हाउ डू यू एक्सपेक्ट हिम टू डू इट इन द गेम? So that I've always been of philosophy that as Indians we are cerebral people, and I think we should be able to produce cerebral and creative players. But if you look at the national team, there are not enough creative players, and that comes down to the grassroots. As you said, the Africans have their physical advantage; they have that ability to hustle. Uh, I think for us it should be creativity. Like we should be having number 10s all over the place. The guys who do the nutmegs, who do the tricks, who see the game from a 360-degree angle. But we are curbing that in the grassroots. And that's been a major downfall why we haven't created goal scorers, or why the national team is so heavily reliant on a Sunil Chetri for goal scoring, because we are not producing those cerebral players. So in grassroots, I think the simple aspect comes down to just giving that child the freedom to express himself or herself, and that does the trick for you, because when the child goes up to a U16, U17, if the same philosophy is there, you have the even fullbacks are creative these days, goalkeepers are creative, so every position requires creativity. So you allow that creativity to bloom and blossom, and that carries on when you become a pro. So I believe that's where we can sort of like influence technology in grassroots as such. What we do is we do an assessment all the time. So we have an online assessment that we do. So all our session planners, everything is online. So a coach makes a session planner, uploads it onto the drive that is seen by all the coaches and the technical team, and the coach makes a assessment of the child. So physical, technical, tactical, psychosocial. I'm going to put them out soon on LinkedIn for everyone to use, because we were just beta testing and we've just done about 8 to 10 months of testing. But it's been it's been a good sign of success. So we're going to put it out, and we send that to parents, a soft copy to parents on WhatsApp. So we've used technology in that aspect to reduce the churn time, to reduce friction and make it paperless. And of course, we've used technology now to get into webinars, to access content and learn from different grassroots curriculums across the world. So that's where technology can come into the grassroots, and the senior team is already in place. So we're set out there.
I think you raised a very interesting point there, right? So the fact that we're cerebral, right? And I think something about Sunil Chetri that's often overlooked is the fact that I think for me at least, he's the best in India in doing it. I would rate him pretty highly in Asia as well. The way he can see a pass, the way he's always at the right place at the right time, right? I mean, he's 35. He doesn't need to run that much. He's still scoring and banging in the goals, right? So he's lost his pace a lot. But you give any coach the option of having him or Udanta or JJ, they'll always pick a Chetri, right? So it's the brain, right? And Indians have had brains, right? We've always prided ourselves on that fact. And I remember I was having a chat with Prashant, and it was a very similar chat, and I ended up asking him a question I'll ask you as well. So we've got the tiki-taka, we've got the ginga from Brazil. What stops India from coming out with its own style? Like in cricket, we have our own style of playing. What stops football from developing its own style? Is it just coaches that are curbing the whole natural instinct at the grassroots? And is it that irreversible learning that has happened that at 14 you can't really learn that again?
I think there are a lot of answers to this one particular problem, but I think historically again, if you see it during our golden era, which was in the 50s to the early 60s, you had revolutionary players and tacticians and managers. So they were the ones who saw the game differently, and I believe that in terms of a quick one-touch football, we saw it in the 50s, and then suddenly it just stopped. And there's not a single answer which is the correct answer that why we didn't develop our own style and stuff like that. I just think that with the course of time, from the golden era of football, of Indian football, we sort of got stuck in stuck in transition, because the world moved ahead and it adapted. And football itself right now has evolved and grown so much. And like the tiki taka was once fascinating, but now you see it's more counter pressing and more aggressive, off ball movement. So football is also evolving very rapidly, and I think us Indian coaches or the Indian ecosystem need to sort of like stay tuned with what's happening around, but not necessarily copy a style as such, because you can't have a lot of success by copying a style. You can probably make a different version of it. Like the Italians are famous for the catenaccio, the score one goal and then just lock the door. But Greece did their own version in Euro 2004 and won it. It was a very similar philosophy to catenaccio, but it had their own element into it. And massive respect for the guys at AIF for bringing the baby leagues from Uruguay to India. But the culture is totally different. In Uruguay, you have a 6-year-old who would put a two-footed sliding tackle and go in without any fear. It's a whole different culture out there. So we need to Indianize it, and I see no reason why we can't do it. And the way that we can do it now, we may not have the physical prowess, but we definitely can improve the technique, and that comes to development in the grassroots. If my player cannot do a one-on-one dribble, or my player doesn't know how to put a weight behind a pass, at the grassroots level, if he becomes pro, it's never going to translate into success. So create those young cerebral all-round technical players in the grassroots, and that creates a philosophy and a culture for the national team, or for the club team when player becomes a professional. So that is where we sort of hit the nail in the coffin and say that, okay, forget everything else, we're going to develop our own style, and let's look at our strengths and try to utilize it. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what has happened to that coach who stopped the child doing a nutmeg, but we definitely promote anything that's creative, because creativity, football is all about imagination and creativity, and I think that's where we can build our own culture and our own style and style of play.
It's heartening to know that we have people in the ecosystem who want that to happen, because
Yeah.
I've always been on your side of the argument that, we're smart people, man. We're absolutely smart people. And it shows in the kind of work we do, right? So why not in football? Hey, I'm going to end this discussion by coming back to a thing you had raised. Spoke about innovation, right? And innovation is not just about introducing newer technology. It's also, as an entrepreneur, pivoting when things are going wrong, right? So the world's gone to a shit, and I've been following what you've been doing, right? So I think you started off Humans of Indian Football even before the whole pandemic happened. But the moment the pandemic started and the whole world went into a lockdown, I saw that you guys started creating a lot of digital assets. And even now you were saying you're going to put out some curriculum onto LinkedIn so people can see. And not a lot of the grassroots training academies, I wouldn't even say grassroots training academies, a lot of bigger academies haven't really actually been successful in doing it, right? So how important, two-pronged question. One, how important is it for an entrepreneur to always keep their eyes and ears open for opportunities? So every time a door closes, does it actually just close that vertical, or do you start pivoting and seeing what can be done? And second, what made you do it? Because when you started off Humans of Indian Football, it was really interesting. The simplicity of the idea is what appealed to me, right? It's not path breaking as such, but the fact that nobody did it and you could do it successfully is what appealed to me a lot. So yeah, what made you guys do that? And obviously, how important is it for an entrepreneur to always keep their eyes open?
I think for an entrepreneur, keeping your mind open is really important. There are some things that you try, it fails. I think the ability to bounce back and try again is what defines being an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you would be not an entrepreneur. Of course, there are some decisions that pay off. Some very quickly, some takes its own time. And yeah, I believe pivoting is quite important. And adapting to situations is very important. For example, with Forza India, we tried a lot of things. Some failed, some did not. Some worked really well, some matched expectations, and some sort of although we thought it's a low hanging fruit, or it's something that will work for sure, failed. So that's where you experience both sides of the spectrum. But I think the key here is to never stop trying. You just keep on trying, experimenting and innovating, and it does pay off. And that's exactly how we started Humans of Indian Football. So we have Vinay and Ashutosh from our team, the Forza India team, and we partnered with Siju, who's a journalist, and she's working with the Association of Indian Football Coaches. So she comes from a journalism background, and we spoke to her. She spoke to her bosses at work, and they gave a all clear to start this project. So for us, it was bringing stories of the people who are in the football ecosystem. Like everyone knows the Sunil Chetri now, but when we did the story of the the Mama, the groundsman from Cooperage,
Yes.
uh, organically you won't believe the post reached up to 30,000 people organically. So on Facebook, Instagram stats are different and stuff like that, or Twitter stats are different. So on Facebook itself, it showed that this man made such an impact on so many lives, and his story is a story that deserves to be told. And similarly in East Bengal, you have the lozenges auntie, right?
Oh,
She got that, yeah, and it's brilliant because these are the people who are there, but they're not in the spotlight. So similarly, what we try to do with this platform is to bring out. Of course, there are some known faces, some unknown faces. We are also scouting for stories, and we were doing the long form story and the picture similar to something of a Humans of Bombay, Humans of New York. So it's not path breaking, but then we decided to pivot to video content because we realized that a lot of people, especially now during the lockdown, are consuming hours and hours worth of content on YouTube or on Instagram TV. And that's when we realized that, with our limited resources, let's make quality content. So it may not be the best editing or the best special effects or voiceovers, but the quality of content is there. The stories are there. And that's what we try to capture in the essence. So we did a 14-day trip to Kerala
oh,
just
that's
to just to shoot and understand the culture. And we met agents, we met with players, ex-players, coaches, and different stakeholders from the industry. But what it amazed me is that the culture of football is so strong in Kerala, and this is a state where 10 years ago, on every ground people were playing cricket. But now, because of the ISL and Kerala Blasters and even Gokulam Kerala, everyone's playing football. So it just
that.
shows that even though that was there, like the football culture has always been there, cricket, because of its popularity, had taken over. But now football has found a way back, and that's what we try to capture uh, in uh, in this particular vlog, 14-day vlog. And we've got some exclusive interviews with Gokulam Kerala, and some of the former coaches like a Chaturni, who's been a legendary coach for Govan and Calcutta clubs and Kerala clubs as well. So we've got like all of that, but because of the pandemic, we've not been able to meet and sit at the edit table and put content out. So we've been chatting on Zoom or on WhatsApp calls and trying to get those subtitles because a lot of the content is in Malayalam and we've been trying to translate it. So it's been difficult to put it out, but we are still putting it out, and we've been the focus of Humans of Indian Football still remains the same: is to bring stories of people, of stakeholders, of who are associated with the game, and bring them onto the spotlight, and probably get a non-football audience also to watch it, because I think the major issue with football content is that it is only watched by people who consume football. So our goal is to make it more inclusive, bring a lot of people who otherwise would not watch. So for a vlog, you see the vlogs, we've done a lot of Kerala also in it, the culture, the places, because that drives people, and then of course football being the center of it all. So yeah, that's how we pivoted with Humans of Indian Football. With Forza India also, we've adapted and sort of evolved from what we were, and I think that is the major lesson that I've learned from my peers and the mentors that I look up to. That they keep on improvising, they keep on innovating, and I think that's what makes us tick on an everyday basis.
No, really, really interesting. I mean, I've been following it, and I think viewers of our show also, if you have not, you should really go see it. I mean, I got some real good gems over there, right? So I was like, and when I was seeing it, I could feel the whole journey, and trust me, one of the things I thought was, hey, once this is done, I hope they go to East Bengal. Right? I hope they cover that bit as well, because that's the next thing I'm interested in seeing.
Yeah.
So, perfect. Hey, Ajay, thanks a lot for coming on the show, man. And this, I think, is a really good note to end the show on as well. So, thank you for coming. And yeah, have a good,
And
hopefully, last few weeks or last few days of the lockdown. Hey?
thank you so much, Aditya, for calling over. I really hope that this gets over. We are so desperate to get back to the football pitch. I can't even tell you. Every day on WhatsApp, we have messages from the kids on many groups like, "Sir, kab start hoga?" We're missing football, and they keep on sending us videos. So what we've also done is that we've sent them like a curriculum pattern to do at home. So simple, like with our coaches actually making a 5 exercise kind of thing. Half an hour, एक दीवार, one wall, or एक football, और कुछ नहीं, without breaking anything. So they've been sending us videos, but yeah, there's no other feeling, than being on the football pitch and doing it. So I hope that we return to normalcy soon, man.
And again, seriously, it's very heartening to know that this culture change is happening, right? So I keep talking about shadow practice करता है या cricket में you hang that ball from a thread and you do it. What's football's equivalent? I think you guys have started doing it. So kudos, and I hope this carries on and this culture shift keeps happening, man. Thank you for coming on the show, Ajay.
Thanks, Arista. Thanks. Take care.